At the very modern Visual Arts Center of New Jersey in Summit, there's a tribute to a different time, 1973.
I came across a reference to an exhibition from 1973. I saw the exhibition title, Women Choose Women, and it kind of fascinated me because I'd never heard of the show, and I thought, what was that about? So I ordered the catalog, found an old copy of it, and discovered that it was the first museum survey in New York City that featured all female artists, and it was organized by women.
It was a big deal at the time. There were 109 artists in the original show. And I remember going to the opening and finding it very exciting and being very happy that I was in it and that it happened, because many of us artists, women artists, were part of a feminist movement in art, and this was the first real big museum show.
Women Choose Women Again features 13 artists from the first show. Joan Snyder has a painting based on Proserpina, the last song written by Kate McGarrigle.
Proserpina, Proserpina, come home to mama.
Faith Ringgold has one of her story quilts.
And this one is particularly, I think, meaningful to a lot of people, talking about her ongoing struggle to lose weight. So she has in the quilt 17 portraits of herself nude at varying weights, and the text that surrounds this painting has to do with the idea of, what if you had a party and all of the people invited were you?
And there's Joyce Kozloff. In the 1970s, she was one of the originators of the pattern and decoration movement. Her work at the Art Center returns to some of these themes.
It's a new piece done in 2013, and it's going to be probably a 12-panel piece, but those were the first 3 panels that I finished. And it's based on work I did in the 1970s. I never thought I would return to that work, which was part of a movement called pattern and decoration. This is one of the ones that's at the museum. In my case, in the case of a number of the women in the movement, it really had to do with the prejudice toward the decorative arts, which were the domain of women and people of color, and were not what we studied in mainstream art history growing up. And suddenly we started looking around, and it was kind of a revelation. So for me, I was using sources from the decorative arts, and I started expanding on it and doing these large pattern paintings. And these are based on Islamic star patterns, which is a very complicated form of geometry. I did that in the 70s, and then I moved into other things afterward. I've been working with mapping in the last 20 years and thinking that maybe I could bring the patterns and maps together. So it feels like I'm coming full circle, and I think a lot of older artists do that. I've seen it. I didn't think I would do it, but I've seen it happen a lot, where there's a kind of pulling things together, tying things together, coming full circle, and there is something very satisfying about it.
You know, it's a completely different landscape now, so I asked each of these artists to invite another woman artist to join the show, making it Women Choose Women again 40 years later.
Joyce Kozloff chose an old friend, artist Judith Henry.
We were friends in college. We went to Italy together one summer. We studied Italian. And when we moved to New York, we shared an apartment.
The Art Center is showing work from Judith Henry's series, Girls, Girls, Girls.
In this, she is restaging the high school yearbook portraits of girls from all over the United States in different time periods, different social strata. She makes a sketch of each girl's face and uses that sketch as a mask and poses holding the mask.
It all started with a high school yearbook from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, circa 1991, found on a bookshelf in a vacation rental in Paris. That led Judith Henry back to her own yearbook.
Now, my yearbook was 1960, Shaker Heights, Ohio, if you can believe that. The thing about the high school yearbooks is they're always in a grid, and the grid allows the same amount of space for each girl, and it allows you to see them all lined up the same. So I decided to use the grid. I drew these girls, I made them mask size, and I held them with my hands. And in fact, what I was doing was hiding behind a young girl and masquerading as a high school student. And that idea fascinated me. Also, the difference between Shaker Heights in 1960 and Cedar Rapids in 1991 was fascinating. So I decided to make a whole series. I don't know if they feel awkward, but it is an awkward age. They're going out into the world. They have no clue as to what their life is about. I'm looking at life from a different perspective. And also, when I think back of my high school years and how naive I was and how little I knew. So I wanted to do women who have already accomplished a lot in life, kind of the other side of it. I wanted to bring them all to my neighborhood. I wanted to see what I could feel like being Virginia Woolf, say, in my neighborhood, which is Williamsburg, Brooklyn. These people are known, and I wanted them to be photographs. I didn't want them to be drawings that I did. These are just anonymous high school girls that I drew, and this is from Girls, Girls, Girls.
The faces are the faces of these girls from these high school yearbooks. But she is using her own hands in all of them. To me, there's something very touching about that, because those are older hands and younger faces. And I love the way they're drawn. I mean, there's something very quirky and personal about the way they're drawn, and the whole idea of it.
I chose 13 women from the original show, and they each chose another woman. So it really became about this network. I also think that if a young female artist feels she doesn't have to be a feminist, she should thank some of these women who were feminists in the 1970s, because perhaps that's why it's a little bit easier today, because of the efforts of women like these.